When the stove is hot and the kitchen is on fire, you already know it's the Mets and it's always for life. Hello everyone and welcome to the Mets Life Hot Stove. I am your host Rashid McDonald, and with me I have a very special guest. He has been covering baseball for Foul Territory in the ground. Right, he's covered the World Series, the last two World Series, and he has his newsletter, the Foul Territory newsletter. He's one of the brains behind that. And so my guest with me, Michael Beir, also covers the Texas Rangers, and we're going to be talking a lot about them. How you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on. I'm a big fan of the pod. I've watched it a few times, especially over the postseason. It was a fun watch when the Mets were on their run there before they got sadly knocked out. We were robbed of a Subway Series World Series. That would have been really cool.
I was hoping for that, but I'm not disappointed at all with how the season ended there with the Mets. I do wish that we got there, but we went further than the Yankees, and I can just be a little bit happy with that. And not further, but we won more games against the Dodgers than the Yankees did, so I can hang my hat on something. But
I think, if I can just say something real quick, I think y'all had a better season than the Yankees, for being honest. The Yankees in the World Series, that was embarrassing. So I think getting knocked out, this is going to sound crazy, but getting knocked out in the NLCS in the way that you did almost seems like a better ending than what the Yankees had. But I'll just leave it at that.
I, I'll take it any way you could give it, right? So, but we're going to talk a little bit about your Texas Rangers, right? They were the World Series champion in 2023, and 2024 did not go the way you would hope, right? Coming off of a championship, you want to go back to back every single time. But in baseball, could say probably one of the only sports, right, around that there hasn't been a back-to-back champion since the Yankees in the late 1990s. And so the Rangers did not have that kind of success. So how do you assess the Texas Rangers in their season?
Yeah, I think 2024. Well, I'll start by saying this. I think the reason we don't see a repeat champion in Major League Baseball, or we haven't really in recent memory at least, baseball's a long season. It's an everyday grind. There are 162 games, but it extends far beyond that. I mean, you're involved in baseball, doing daily activities more often than you're not. And that's not to say that you're not doing that in other sports, but with baseball, again, like I mentioned, being such a grind, it is a lot harder to go back to back. And then when you look at the Rangers, that team is the team that won in 23, had some veteran leaders, but it was also a pretty young team. There wasn't a lot of super vets on that squad. There were players that had been there and done that. Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, Max Scherzer, Nathan Eovaldi. But then you look at some of the younger guys, the Evan Carters of the world, even Nathaniel Lowe, who's not incredibly young, but he's not necessarily old. And I think that just kind of caught up to them. It was a young team talented team, but every team, no team is perfect. And I think the short off season kind of hit them where it hurt. And I think maybe that's a little bit of foreshadowing as to what's to come with the Los Angeles Dodgers. I mean, the Dodgers finished late, and now they have early spring training because they open up in Japan. So it remains to be seen with them. But just regarding the Rangers, they were also very hurt this past season, and I don't like giving excuses or I don't like giving the injury excuse out. But if you look at the amount of players that they didn't have for extended period of times, and it would have helped to have them on the field. So it happened the way it happened, and it is what it is. It was a bad year. You move on. You still have a Hall of Fame manager at the helm, and 2025 I'm sure will be a lot better than last season.
I think so. And one of the reasons why I believe that is because going into the 2024 season, I had the Texas Rangers actually winning the division because they have a very good farm system, right? That's the first thing, right? They have a lot of good young guys coming up in the Rangers organization. And so I felt confident that with the mix of veterans that they had with Max Scherzer, and Evaldi, and a lot that they had in the rotation mixed in with some of the young guys that were coming up like Kuma Rocker, Jack Leiter. So like all of these things I felt was a good combination, a good mix with their manager to get them back into the postseason, and it didn't work out that way. And sometimes that does happen. But I want to go back to the starting rotation, right? What do you think that rotation would look like? Because now they're without Scherzer, without Eovaldi. So what in this offseason do you expect the Rangers to do to, reload that starting rotation?
I don't know if they really can do much. The Rangers have spent so much money in prior off seasons that they're kind of at a point where, it's bad timing for them to have to spend money on a starting pitcher. So many teams right now are spending this offseason, which is only inflating the market, the starting pitching market, especially because everyone needs pitching. So really, you're going to have to look internally. You're going to have to get guys like Jack Leiter to step up. You're going to have to get Kumar Rocker stepping up. Tyler Mahle, who was on the shelf a lot of 2024, is going to have to rebound health-wise. DeGrom, you're not going to get a full season out of him. If you're expecting a full season out of Jacob DeGrom in 2025, then I've got news for you, bad news for you. But it's going to be interesting. I'd like to say go to a six-man rotation. I don't know if you necessarily have the major league assets to do that right now. Cody Bradford is probably going to have a pretty decent year after a solid season in 24. And then, of course, John Gray. And that's pretty much, that's your five right now going into the season if you drew it up right now. Like I mentioned with DeGrom and even with Kumar Rocker, there's some health concerns there. I mean, there's health concerns with three, maybe even four out of the five guys in this rotation other than Cody Bradford. So it's going to have to be a very creative rotation. I'll put it that way. They're going to have to move some pieces around it. And like I mentioned, you're going to have guys that you trusted, such as the Jack Leiter with, the number 2 overall pick years ago, step up. And, it's time to perform at the major league level. This is your opportunity. And if that happens, and I think they'll be in a lot better position than they're in right now. Not to say that they're not in a great position. They have talent, but as I mentioned, they're going to have to get creative, which is never a good thing when you have to get creative.
Now, Kumar Rocker, let's go back to him, right? He got called up last year, had a couple starts, little cup of coffee, and so he didn't have a win, but he did strike out 14 in 11 plus innings pitched. What can you tell me about Kumar Rocker and what do you expect from him this season coming up?
I expect some growing pains. I don't think he's necessarily our Paul Skeens. I think a lot of Rangers fans watched Kumar Rocker last year and were wowed by the stuff, as they should be. But he's not going to, as I mentioned, be like Paul Skeens, go out there and pitch to a sub-2 ERA, at least in my opinion. We saw in his rookie season at the major league level, there were some command issues finding the strike zone. I do think that he's going to come back in 2025 and he's going to have sharpened that up over the winter. But I think with Kumar Rocker, especially considering the recent the recent injury concerns, obviously the falling out with the Mets. Sorry to bring that up here on a Mets podcast.
That's cool. But
cool. I think, and I keep going back to this word, they're just going to have to be creative with it. I'm not saying, put him in the bullpen, but I'm saying like you might have to, give him a few extra days of rest. It just depends. A full major league season out of Kumar Rocker we've never seen at this point. The major leagues is a different ball game. He dominated in the minors, but there are going to be adjustments. There are going to be growing pains. He's a very talented pitcher. Don't get me wrong, and I do believe that he could, at his potential, be an ace even with his stuff. I mean, his slider is disgusting.
Right.
But you just got to hope that over the offseason and even throughout the season that he gets that command down. He's a young guy. He'll get it eventually. The talent exceeds pretty much every doubt I think anyone would ever have about Kumar Rocker because he really is a special pitcher.
He is. And, bringing back that whole Mets story, right? So for those of you who don't know, Kumar Rocker was drafted coming out of Vanderbilt by the Mets. And there was something that happened with his medicals that the Mets didn't like. They still picked him. And they had every intent to, have him a part of the organization. But once the issues came up with whether he was going to take the MRI or wasn't going to take the MRI, the Mets backed out. And then Kumar Rocker went to independent ball and then, re-entered the draft and got selected by the Texas Rangers. So it's going to be very interesting to see what he can bring. There is a lot of life in his stuff. There is some good. And I think the Rangers are, whether, with injuries, those things are unpredictable. With pitchers nowadays, they get injured like it's nothing. But I think the Rangers are going to rely on him because they feel like he's ready, right? He, age-wise, I feel like there's pretty much nothing else. Maybe I'm wrong, but there's probably nothing else he can do in the minor leagues right now is just get him in the major leagues. Let's see what he has. And if he's not healthy, we're just going to have to, next man up type of situation. But I want to talk about my guy, Jacob deGrom. Now, I understand how that whole thing happened. And, there are Met fans who are upset at the way it happened and things like that. But I don't blame the Rangers, right? They went to Jacob deGrom. They said, here's the money that we have offer for you. But this is now. If you go back to the Mets, we know they're going to match it. So there's no going back. So you either take it now or you don't take it at all. And Jacob deGrom felt like he wanted a fresh start, wanted to just start over again. And he did that. And he was good before he got injured for the Rangers. He was solid, right? But they ended up winning a championship, and I think he'll take that. I know he would rather have participated in the World Series to win the championship, but he deserves a championship. So I'm just happy he got one with you guys. But what can you tell me about what you can expect from Jacob deGrom this season for the Texas Rangers?
It's really hard to tell, at least from a health perspective, because as you mentioned, you can't really predict injuries. Although with a guy like Jacob deGrom, you can assume that, as I mentioned previously, you're not going to get a full season out of him. Very similar to what we just talked about with Kumar Rocker being a younger guy with the previous health concerns with deGrom. In his case, he's a much older guy. There's some mileage on that arm. We could see the Rangers potentially skip a start, maybe give him a few extra days of rest at various points throughout the season. Excuse me. If that keeps him healthy, then that's what you have to do. But like I said, you're not going to expect a full season out of Jacob deGrom. I don't think this is the Jacob deGrom that we're going to get is not necessarily the Jacob deGrom that the Rangers signed, and that's okay. He's still a very effective pitcher. When Jacob deGrom was at his best with the Mets, he was the best pitcher in Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
Even 80, 85, 90% of that, which is probably what he is at this point, is still really, really good. That's still a top of the rotation arm. The key is just getting him healthy. He came up a little bit last year at the end of the season, and he looked good. His fastball was still hitting 99 to 100. Wasn't doing it as consistently, but the velocity was still there. And he wasn't necessarily even showing his entire repertoire when he was up pitching with the Rangers in September last season. So we're going to get a full throttle Jacob deGrom at some point this season, assuming he's healthy. If the Rangers are still in it down the stretch, I would assume that you're going to see Jacob deGrom at least trying at his best, because early on in the season, spring training, I think you're still going to be kind of easing into it. You have to be really careful with a guy that had 2 Tommy John surgeries,
right?
And that everyone kind of expects at some point will hit the injured list. But I think, assuming Jacob deGrom is on the field, you can expect 5-6 innings to keep you in the game. He's still a very, very effective arm. Just don't get your hopes up that he's going to give you 20 starts a year, as everyone already knows, I'm sure.
They do. Now, there's really not much wrong I can say about Jacob deGrom. When he was with the Mets, it was just pretty much appointment television every single time he stepped foot on the rubber. And I do wish that in 2021 he didn't get hurt the way he got hurt, because he was off to an unbelievable start that year, on his way to possibly winning a 3rd Cy Young, and then everything just happened. And it wasn't really Tommy John then. It was just pretty much talking about a lot of velocity. Should he bring it back? Is he throwing too hard? Is he doing, whatever? But for me, Jacob deGrom is undoubtedly the second best pitcher in the history of the New York Mets, and I could say that confidently, right? We're not going to put him above Tom Seaver. The guy has a statue in front of Citi Field, for crying out loud. But Jacob deGrom deserves all of the flowers when it comes to his career with the Mets. And I think he's going to have a solid season. He's not, again, like you said, he's not going to be the Jacob deGrom of old. But the Jacob deGrom that you're going to get is going to be better than a lot of guys that are going to be on the mound this season for a lot of teams. So anyone would take a, 70, 80% Jacob deGrom any day of the week.
And can I just say real quick,
For sure.
Jacob deGrom, there's this weird narrative I've seen on social media that Jacob deGrom doesn't care anymore. He's a gamer, he's a competitor,
Right.
and I feel like what you're going to see out of Jacob deGrom this year is a lack of innings. That's just because that has to happen. The Rangers have to be careful with him. That silly narrative that he's over it, he's old, ridiculous. I mean, the dude shed tears when he met with the media
When he got hurt,
after
yeah.
he was informed that he had to undergo TJ for the second time. So I just wanted to throw that out there. That's ridiculous, and I fully expect, again, with the lack of innings he's probably going to pitch this year, that people will bring that up again. And if you see that, disregard it. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. And that's not, for the people who are doing that, I just don't understand the reasoning for doing. I mean, come on. Like I had the pleasure, was spoiled, right? Met fans were spoiled with deGrom's presence from the moment he stepped on the mound against the Yankees, right? In a start that really wasn't his start. Right? He started for Dylan G, who got hurt, and then all of a sudden Jacob deGrom was born. So I agree. Everything you said is 100% true. Jacob deGrom is a gamer. Jacob deGrom he has everything that guys like Verlander, Max Scherzer, everything that they have, that they show, that emotion that they wear on their sleeves. He just performs, right? He goes on the mound, he does it on the mound, right? He's the type of guy that leads by example, not by using his voice or voicing that. And we saw that here. So if anybody's questioning his game, no, just stop now. Forget about that. Let's move on. And now, since we're moving on, we're going to talk about the offseason, right? It's hot stove season. The winter meetings are coming up, and I know you're going to be over there covering it for Foul Territory. So for the Rangers, are we looking at maybe a reunion with Eovaldi, maybe trading for Montgomery again? I worked there for him. What can you expect the Rangers to do over these next few days at the winter meetings?
I don't expect the Rangers to really be active in the free agent market. I think I give Nathan Eovaldi the chance of signing with another team, a bigger chance rather of him signing with another team than re-signing with the Rangers. Their TV situation is just so up in the air, and as I've mentioned, they've already spent so much money in prior off seasons that I just don't think they're in the position right now to give out a contract like Nathan Eovaldi's going to get, and he's not going to get top of the market dollar like Corbin Burns is going to get. Probably the most of any starting pitcher on the market. Nathan Eovaldi isn't going to get that, but he's still going to get a hefty amount of money. You're going to get, or Nathan Eovaldi rather is going to get at least 150, 175 million, and that might even be a little on the lower side because, as I mentioned, so many teams are spending, which only inflates the market, and everyone needs pitching. So I think if the Rangers are adding, they're doing it through these miniature signings. The Kyle Higashioka the other day. They might trade, a few guys. Nathaniel Lowe was brought up as a guy that they are considering or have been considering in the past by Ken Rosenthal on Fair Territory the other day. So I don't think they're going to be huge players in the market necessarily. Look at a guy like Roki Sasaki. If he's not going to sign with the Dodgers, I think the Rangers have a really good chance at him because he's not expensive at all. So that's ideally a great ad. I mean, it's ideally a great ad for any organization, but the Rangers have history with Sasaki. So if that's a guy that wants to pave his own way and doesn't want to be hidden in the shadow of Ohtani and Yamamoto, I think the Rangers would be a great fit for him. But I would not expect the Rangers to really be involved in any high dollar free agents, and that, unfortunately, for Rangers fans who probably don't want to hear this, includes fan favorite Nathan Eovaldi, who was a integral part in the 2023 World Series championship team.
Okay, so if Eovaldi is probably out of the range, uh, one suggestion I did have, which you might say it's out of the range as well, but I was thinking somewhere along the lines of maybe a Jack Flaherty. I don't think he's going to command a lot on the market, but I figured that he would be a guy that maybe the Rangers would, okay, if this drags on, he still hasn't signed a contract, maybe they can, plug him in and sign him. And then if things don't go well, they could just trade him like the Tigers did.
Yeah, with Flaherty, I see a scenario where his free agency plays out very similar to the way Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery's did last year, where, as you mentioned, it dragged out. And if it gets to that point, yes, I think on a 1 year deal, a 2 year deal, maybe a 1 year deal with, some incentives or thresholds to take it to a 2 3 year deal, that's very, that's possible. Um, I think Flaherty is one of those guys that if a team signs him early on, you're probably going to overpay for him. And I don't think teams are really interested in overpaying for free agents that aren't named Juan Soto or Corbin Burns with the CBA negotiations upcoming and the uncertainty with really everyone's television deals. So yes, I could see a scenario where his free agency drags along, and as I mentioned, if he gets to that point, the Rangers probably would have interest. Back to Jordan Montgomery though, because I know you had mentioned him, and I kind of skipped over him. It'd be interesting to see if the Rangers reacquire him. Obviously, there's familiarity there with 2023, and it seems as if that bridge is kind of already burned with what the Diamondbacks owner said about him on public radio. I wonder if the Diamondbacks owner knew that Jordan Montgomery was still under team control for 2025. But if Jordan Montgomery's on the trade market, I think, yes, absolutely, the Rangers are a player. Because when you have an owner come out and say that about a player, I don't think that the price is going to be very high. So at the winter meetings, I don't think it's a far-fetched idea to assume or to possibly expect Jordan Montgomery trade talks to the Rangers intensifying. And that's completely speculatory. But yes, those pitchers, if you're going to add to your rotation, those are the only scenarios that I envision taking place where the Rangers fans rather can get excited about outside additions, where a Jordan Montgomery trade happens or a player's free agency drags out. I think really that's the only scenario where you add a big name per se to this rotation and you can get excited about it.
That's true. So going back to Roki Sasaki, you were talking about him a little bit, and he's one that I think this is very eerily similar to the Yu Darvish thing, right? Where everybody kind of thought the same with Yu Darvish, where he was going to go to a West Coast team because, that's where the big Asian population is. But it's like that he went to the Rangers, had success there, didn't finish his career there, and he's still pitching. He's pitching with the Padres. But I can see that for Roki Sasaki. Like you said, right? There's a lot of things going on the West Coast, and maybe not wanting to put that pressure on him to perform early on. I think that would be a good move for him, going to the Rangers, not even going not the Yankees, not the Mets, going to a team like the Rangers or maybe like the Astros, something like that. To me would be something that I could expect for Roki Sasaki, but I might be wrong because you got reports from other reporters saying that he already picked the Dodgers. So, I mean, if he goes to the Dodgers, that's just going to be an embarrassment of riches when it comes to that rotation. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to move on. We're going to talk about Nathaniel Lowe. There was conversation on Foul Territory yesterday about Nathaniel Lowe. Would he be a trade target? What would they do with him? What say you about Nathaniel Lowe?
I think Nathaniel Lowe is an interesting case. I think the coaching staff really likes Nathaniel Lowe. He's a fan favorite. He's a big part of the organization. The thing with Nathaniel Lowe is he's a first baseman that doesn't necessarily hit for, since we're on a Mets show, Pete Alonso power.
Right.
And that's what you really look for out of a first baseman. Now, I'm not discounting, he has a Gold Glove under his belt, good defense over there at first base. But ideally, out of a first baseman, you want a guy that can crank 40 homers a year. And Nathaniel Lowe just he doesn't really do that. He has trouble with velocity. So I think ideally you look to a guy who Ken Rosenthal brought up, a Jock Peterson, someone who's not that expensive, is not going to hit for a crazy good average, not going to have a great on base percentage, but can mash for you. I don't think that Nathaniel Lowe will get traded. I think this is probably a conversation that will, or a discussion rather, that will intensify after next season when you have Munetaka Murakami come over from Japan. The Rangers will absolutely be in those sweepstakes. But I think you shouldn't ignore it because I think it is. I wouldn't call it a problem, but I think it is something that Rangers fans should monitor. How Nathaniel Lowe plays this year is going to determine a lot about his future with the organization, in my opinion. Because, as I mentioned, out of a first baseman, you're looking for a guy that can mash. And Nathaniel Lowe has that capability. We just really haven't seen that from him or we didn't really see it much from him in 2024.
Well, hopefully he can bring something to the table this season that can help the Rangers get back to the postseason because that's what it's all about. Now, speaking about the postseason, it's been announced that a new documentary about the Rangers 2023 championship will be coming out. And I want to get your thoughts on that. Is it too late for that? Why is it coming out now and it did not come out before?
So I think actually that documentary already came out. It was some people had talked about they'd already seen it on Bally Sports.
Okay.
But not that many people were aware of it. So in a sense, it is kind of new. And I do think it's weird that they decided to release it on December 9th, or it's going to release rather on December 9th, 2024. Yeah, I don't know why there wasn't an official Major League Baseball World Series documentary because I don't know if this is like officially a Major League Baseball production. I get it, it was the Rangers and the Diamondbacks. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat. I'm not going to dance around it. Yes, that is probably. I mean, the numbers said it's themselves. It was a World Series that didn't draw much interest from even baseball fans. I mean, forget fans outside of the sport. So I mean, I get it if you don't want to, put the resources into it, but I do think it's weird. Yeah, I don't know how to feel. I'm just glad that Rangers fans are getting an opportunity to see a documentary, but I think it's weird the timing of it.
Yeah, I agree with that. So before we get out of here, I want to just run a couple quick questions. Winter meetings are around the corner. So Juan Soto, what's the deal with him? Where is he going to sign for how much?
I think it's going to the Mets. I think the Yankee situation, interesting take here that people have, that I've had discussions with people about, but I think that Yankee situation is just really awkward. I mean, not really having a relationship with Hal Steinbrenner and Hal knowing that Juan has 1 year to go when he came over last offseason.
Right.
The whole Aaron Judge, I'm not texting him thing until he makes a decision. By the way, I don't necessarily think that's real, but if he said it, we'll take his word for it. I don't know. I feel like Juan Soto back with the Yankees was a slam dunk. Everyone kind of knew that it was probably going to happen during the season. And then we get in here to the offseason, you get all these reports that there's 5 teams in it, and the Yankees don't necessarily have a home field advantage. It just seems like an awkward situation. You already have Aaron Judge on that team. He's the captain. Juan Soto will forever be the number 2 on the New York Yankees. If he goes over to the Mets, obviously you guys have Francisco Lindor, but I think, putting Juan Soto on that team, it might not necessarily make him a captain, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's more Juan Soto jerseys in the stadium on a given summer day than Francisco Lindor. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think it's that far fetched that he has a better chance of going to the Mets here, and a decision is I think expected this weekend. I mean, Steve Cohen's probably going to offer him more money.
Right.
We know that Juan Soto and Scott Boras are looking for top dollar. We know that he's made it very clear that is what he wants. He wants the most money, and I think the Mets have that advantage.
Well, from your mouth to God's ears, I want it, one, because I want it to be over with. I want to talk about other things. And 2, I want the just the trades and the deals to just start flowing, man. Let's get this offseason going. Let's finish with that. And that's why I think it's going to happen this weekend. And I agree. I think it's going to be the Mets. And the number that I'm thinking is going to be 15 years, 700, around 7 to 750. I do think that the Mets will go that hard. I mean, it's just, what do they have to lose, especially with the kind of owner that they have?
Yeah. And when it's a bidding war for a 26-year-old generational hitter, yes, it will absolutely exceed 700 million.
Exactly, right? The age has to factor in that. Absolutely. Last one, Corbin Burnes. Where does he end up?
That's a tough one. I mean, so many teams are interested in pitchers. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he's back with the Orioles. I mean, there's going to be a lot of teams driving the price up of Corbin Burnes, as with Juan Soto. So I think relative to the production you're getting, not saying he's a bad pitcher, he's not worth, a top dollar contract, but you're going to overpay regardless because so many teams are inflating his price. I think the Red Sox could be a possibility. I know they've really been linked to Max Fried. Mostly, I could see them swooping in, and if they miss out on Juan Soto or even Fried, because there was that report that he spoke with the Yankees. Hot take. I don't think it's I don't think it's very far fetched that to assume he's back with the Orioles.
That was my line of thinking as well. I think he does go back to the Orioles just because, one, I don't think this is necessarily such a big money grab kind of thing for him. But maybe I'm wrong because there was a whole lot of back and forth with the Brewers and, they kind of did him wrong with arbitration. So maybe, money is a motivator here for Corbin Burnes. But I do think that it's going to be between the Red Sox and the Orioles, and then whichever one offers him what he's looking for, and then I think they'll go with it. And on one more guy, Teoscar Hernandez, I know there was talk about that they're trying to lock him up for 3 years with the Dodgers, but I don't think so. Not so fast. I think if the Red Sox are out on Soto, I think they'll put him in. I think everything that they're trying to do with Juan Soto, with, whole Dominican Republic type of thing that they've been talking about recently, they can achieve that with a Teoscar Hernandez. And so I wouldn't be so fast to think that it's done, but if I'm the Dodgers, why not? He helped win a championship. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's just up to what Teo wants. Teo's obviously a fan favorite over there in LA. I was fortunate enough to go watch the World Series in person and cover it and just see how much those fans loved him. And the love he gave back. You saw at the parade, he literally broke down in tears. Right. There's a mutual interest to want to return with the Dodgers. But you're right. If the Red Sox lose out on Juan Soto and they intend to, or if they want to give out a lot of money, a big contract, Teoscar Hernandez is going to be near the top, if not at the top of that list. So it just depends on what Teo wants. Does he want the payday? If he goes back to the Dodgers, he's not going to get as much as he's going to get going to the Red Sox.
Right.
He goes back to the Dodgers, probably not going to get that long of a deal as compared to the Red Sox either. So it's his preference. We've seen him bet on himself. We've seen him, go to a destination with the Dodgers last offseason where it was just a 1-year deal. So I wouldn't. I think there's a better chance he goes back to the Dodgers than signs elsewhere. But the points you bring up are very real. I mean, the Red Sox are going to probably offer him more money, and at the end of the day, it's just up to what he prefers.
That's true. I agree with that. Well, Michael, thank you for joining me here on this Mets Life Hot Stove edition. For everyone who's watching, follow Mike on social media, all the social medias. He's going to be at the winter meetings. He's going to be covering it there. Again, thank you for stopping by. I appreciate your time, and I wish you all success going forward.
Yeah, Mets Rangers World Series 2025. Let's do it.
Let's do it.